may have read. It's also been made into a movie called The Hobbit. And The Hobbit is a story about a little man who is a hobbit named Bilbo Baggins. Bilbo Baggins being a hobbit. The hobbits are a race of little people, very short people who live in comfortable little homes in a nice quiet little village, who also very much love all the homely comforts of life. They love good food, good tea, don't work too hard, They love comfortable homes, and so on. Of course, the story of the Hobbit is about one of these little hobbits, Bilbo Baggins, who also loves the comfort of home. And all of a sudden, a wizard breaks into his life, comes into his comfortable space in life, named Gandalf, who invites him onto a great adventure. This adventure will also be a little dangerous, because it involves, slaying a dragon, all of that. So Bilbo is sort of left with this decision, in this tension of wrestling with leaving his comfortable home that he's very much drawn to and attracted to, or going on this great adventure and leaving his comforts behind. It's a tension that he's wrestling with. At one point, at least in the movie, he asks Gandalf, the wizard, a question. He says, well, if I go on this adventure, can you promise that I will come back? And Gandalf says, no. And if you do, it will not be the same. Well, needless to say, Bilbo goes on the adventure, because if he didn't, it would have been a very, very short book. But I found in my own life that I myself tend to be a creature of comforts. I don't particularly enjoy suffering. I like good food and good drink, comfortable beds, and so on. I remember even back in my younger days when I started thinking about this idea of seminary. I started getting this nagging call, sort of this invitation to this adventure to live the priestly life. And, okay, there's something to that, but also that means that there was some comfortable things I might have to leave behind. Sort of waffling in what I call the Bilbo Baggins syndrome. And maybe there's something that's attracted to this great adventure, and that's a nice idea, but home is very comfortable. I like my good food and drink, and so on. Also, I realize I also was one who very much likes to keep my options open. So don't commit to anything, because that way you always have all your options open. Well, at some point you have to say yes to something, and when you do, that means you're saying no to some other things. Some other options are going to close. So as Jesus calls us in our own lives to follow after him more fully and more completely, ever more fully in our lives, something we strive to do every day, it's realizing in that call it may mean that we may need to leave behind certain comforts. We may need to say no to things, to let go of things, even good things. But the way that we say no to these comfortable things is to have a deeper yes. The way to say no is to have a deeper yes. So in our gospel today, we have Jesus, and he calls a few folks to come and follow him. And they say, well, I'll come follow you, but let me do this thing first or that thing first. I have these other good things I need to go do. I think part of what Jesus is getting at is helping them to see in his responses that sometimes we have to let go of certain good things to say yes to something even greater. Because notice, by the way, the things that people were doing, that their excuses weren't necessarily bad things. To, go bury their father, or to go say farewell to their family. I was sort of humorously reflecting on that. What would it have been like if I snuck away and went off to seminary and never said anything to my mother? that would not have gone very well. Just left without saying goodbye or anything. So I would have heard about it eventually. But it's about this part of the call of Jesus is letting go of a lesser good for the sake of a higher good. Letting go of a lesser good for a higher good. Because sometimes we're prone to, as human beings, to do the opposite. That we're prone to, when we could do the greater good, that it's easy for us to give into a lesser good or more immediate good at the sacrifice of the greater good. And in a lot of ways, this is really at the heart of many of our sins and temptations. To sacrifice the better thing, the greater good, for this more immediate thing. Oh, I could go out and do this good thing for others, for the community, or whatever. But, this cookie looks really good. There's a show on Netflix I've been dying to watch. So I'll just binge watch Netflix and eat a cookie, Well, not that Netflix or cookies are necessarily a bad thing, but when we sacrifice a greater good for it, that's when it becomes a bad thing. So Jesus calls us, in his call in our life, there's this call of this radical reorientation to a deeper and higher yes. But again, it can be a struggle to say no to those things. And sometimes we can get fixated on the things that we're leaving behind, the things we have to say no to. Kind of as Jesus says, like we put our hand to the plow, but we keep looking back at the thing we left behind. So how do we get to that deeper and higher yes? Well, part of it comes from falling in love. For those of you who are married out there, when you got married and said yes to this person, you then said no to all the other options out there. Because we live in a world of, 7 billion people. You may look at the person you're married to, next to you, and think, statistically, it's likely that there's a better option out there. Someone who's smarter, more intelligent, more dashing and handsome, beautiful, maybe doesn't drive me as crazy, There might be a better model out there. But of course, on your wedding day, you didn't think of, hopefully, oh man, there's a lot of better options out there. No, all these options you said no to. Why? Because you fell in love. Fell in love. You realize that in saying yes to this thing, you didn't think about all the no's, the things you were giving up, because you were saying yes to something marvelous and beautiful. And so too it is with Christ. I realized as I was thinking about seminary, and there was this possibility, if I continued on toward priesthood, that would mean giving up marriage and family. And I was thinking about that, and I think I could have chosen the life to be married and have a family and been relatively happy and led a good life. Sometimes I probably would think, and I think I would have been really good at it, Lord, you sure you want to take this away from the ladies, I think I'm a great catch. But of course then, I realized there was this falling in love. That how I was able to not just get fixated on what was being given up, because of the call of Christ, there was this falling in love with something higher and bigger and deeper, with God himself. And so, for me, it was Jesus breaking into my pleasant and comfortable life, like Gandalf did with Bilbo Baggins, to calling to this greater adventure. Not always easy and not comfortable all the time. Foxes have dens and birds have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. No promise that I would come back to this comfortable place, or if I did, I wouldn't be the same. What ultimately helped me to overcome those fears was exactly that. The deeper yes came from falling in love. The deeper yes that reorients everything else. So what would it mean then if we took seriously the call of Jesus in our life? What would it mean if I allowed my yes to Jesus to reorient everything else in my life, to reorder everything in my life? And what is it he might be calling me to say no to, so that I can give him a deeper, fuller yes? And it's that falling in love that makes all